I really don't care what people say about this because honestly, I don't usually share it. Plus, I'm hardly ever on this app, and actually, this is my first time in over 4 months or something like that. But here's my story. This happened about 2 years ago. I was 17 at the time, going through that phase where you feel like you need to work out all day, every day. I was in that era of being a teenage boy, trying to push myself nonstop. I worked out every day and loved it. I started seeing progress and felt great about it. I had a set workout schedule, the usual routines and lots of running. Cardio was one of my favorites, even though I know a lot of people hate it. Every night from around 10 p.m. to about 12:30 a.m., I'd go for a long run around my neighborhood. I hated how I looked, so I always ran at night on the side of the neighborhood where there were no cars and no people. That area gave me peace. It felt safe in a weird way, even though it was dark and secluded. I don't know how to explain it, but maybe someone out there knows what I mean. The area had a dirt road running alongside the neighborhood, with a canal on one side and fences from people's backyards on the other. Along the fences there were shrubs, bushes, and a few trees here and there. On this particular night, no lights were on in the houses, none at all. Normally there'd be at least a few lights on, which should have been my first sign that this night would be different. But I didn't think too much of it, and went on my run as usual. This wasn't full-on running. I'd jog, stop to catch my breath, and take water breaks. At first everything felt normal, but about halfway through my jog, I swear I heard heavy breathing behind me. It wasn't close, maybe 30 feet away. I turned around but didn't see anyone, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. I kept running, but about 10 minutes later I heard it again. The same heavy breathing. This time I stopped and turned around, but again, nothing. I started to feel uneasy, but I didn't want to let whatever or whoever was out there know that I was aware of them. When I reached the end of my neighborhood and crossed the little bridge to head back along the other side of the canal, I heard rocks crunching and heavy breathing again. I glanced across the canal and saw a figure dressed in all black. I couldn't make out any details. No gender, no face, but it looked taller than me. That's when I ran. As I sprinted, I glanced back, but the figure was gone. Then I heard someone yell, "Hey, I see you!" from my right. Panicked, I dropped my backpack and bolted as fast as I could. The moment I let go of the weight, I felt a wave of relief as I was faster and lighter. I wanted to keep my bag, but staying alive felt way more important. When I was almost back to the main road, I saw it. Its face was dark, with wide gray eyes. I couldn't make out any other features, if it even had any. I ran faster, reaching the busy main road, and when I looked back, it was gone. The next day, I went back to the area with my brother and a couple of friends during daylight to look for my backpack. We found it, but there was a note attached that said, "See you soon." Just thinking about it gives me chills. Later that day, while hanging out in my room with my friends, I saw a news alert pop up on my phone. It was about a man in his late 40s who had raped and killed a hitchhiker and someone walking their dog in my city, the same week I had my experience. That would explain why all the houses in the neighborhood had their lights off. I never saw that man again, and I never heard about him on the news after that. I don't even know if he was ever caught. But after that night, I made a promise to myself. I'd never go running at night again. Dyer Street in El Paso has a long history of violence, drugs, crime, and death. Ask anyone in El Paso about Dyer, and I guarantee they'll have a story about the Devil's Triangle or the Econo Lodge. So it makes sense that the store I work at might be haunted. I work at Burlington, but it wasn't always a Burlington. It used to be a big Kmart before it closed down in 2017, and the space was redeveloped into a strip mall. Since Burlington opened in 2022, nearly everyone who has worked there has stories, like items falling over, footsteps heard when no one is around. I always chalked it up to the building settling or something being off balance. That is, until last week. It was Black Friday, which isn't a big deal for Burlington since we don't have sales. I mean, it's already a discount store. That didn't stop the store from being packed with people doing their early Christmas shopping. It was a little past 8 p.m., and I was helping a family load one of those little ride-on toy cars into their truck. When I walked back inside, I got a call on the radio. One of the closed-off fitting rooms had been opened. Those rooms are locked up tight, so I figured maybe some kids had messed with the doorknob and broken it. When I checked it out, though, the doorknob was fine, and no one was inside. I locked it back up and went back to helping at the front of the store. About 20 minutes later, I heard something fall behind me. I turned around and saw a Santa Claus lawn statue had fallen over. I didn't think much of it, so I picked it up and set it back in place. But as soon as I did, a stuffed snowman sitting on the top shelf fell right in front of me, setting off the touch-activated lights we had on the jewelry display. I stepped back, looking around to see if anyone had bumped into the shelves, but it was just me standing there. By this point, I was starting to get a little freaked out. That's when the jewelry lights started flashing randomly. These lights only turn on if you tap the display boxes the jewelry is in. The lights blinked a few times at random, then stopped. Before I could fully process what was happening, the automatic doors behind me started opening and closing by themselves 3 times, without anyone near them. Then, just as suddenly as it all started, it stopped. The lights stopped blinking, the doors returned to normal, and nothing else fell over. When my supervisor walked by, I told her what had happened. She just said, "Oh, it must be the Kmart ghost again," before walking away while giggling lightly as if it were no big deal. Nothing else happened the rest of that night, but every shift I've worked since then, something falls over without explanation. My coworkers have also mentioned hearing strange noises coming from the closed-off fitting rooms. A little backstory. When I first moved to the state I currently live in, I spent some time couch surfing before finally finding a roommate. We moved into a rather old apartment in a quieter part of the big city. When I say old, I mean radiator heating, an electrical system so outdated that running too many appliances at once would trip the breaker, and other quirks. I was the first to move in because my roommate hadn't arrived yet. They were moving from Arizona. Since I had no furniture at the time, I was sleeping on the floor. By default, I always close the door to the room I'm sleeping in. It's a force of habit, even when I'm alone. One thing I noticed about the bedroom door was that it took quite a bit of force to shut it properly. No big deal. I got it closed and went to bed. When I woke up, the door was wide open. I found it strange because I had given the door a firm tug before bunkering down on the floor. I didn't think much of it at the time, but it kept happening. Over time, I noticed the apartment began to feel off. About a week later, my roommate finally arrived and moved in. From then on, strange things would occasionally happen. The door opening on its own became a regular occurrence. On some nights, I'd hear rustling noises in the kitchen, or the sound of footsteps long after both my roommate and I had gone to bed. I knew it wasn't them, because they always turned on the hallway lights when heading to the kitchen or bathroom. For the 1.5 years we lived there, those disturbances were the only oddities. They were unsettling, but not unbearable. Fast forward a year, and a friend from Colorado came to visit for a week. One night, we decided to turn in early since we planned to explore downtown the next morning. My friend slept on the pull-out couch in the living room while I went to my room and shut the door firmly behind me. Exhausted, I passed out quickly. About an hour later, I woke up to the sound of creaking and the jiggling of my bedroom door handle. I opened my eyes just in time to see the door slowly swing open until it was wide open. Assuming I hadn't shut it properly, I got up, closed it again, and made sure to pull it tight. Still feeling uneasy, I pulled the hood of my hoodie up. Winter nights in that apartment were freezing, and curled back up in bed. Only a few minutes had passed when I felt something yank the hood of my hoodie back with force, as if trying to drag me along with it. I froze in terror, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I wasn't dreaming. It was too vivid. After what felt like an eternity, the feeling subsided, and I lay there, trying to calm my nerves. Eventually, I drifted off into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, I walked out of my room to find my friend just waking up. I asked if they had heard my door open during the night. They looked confused and answered, "No," before starting their morning routine. To this day, I can't explain what happened. Maybe I was working myself into a panic, or perhaps it really was a spirit in that apartment. Both possibilities seem plausible, but that doesn't take away from how terrifying it felt in the moment. I think about it now and then, and honestly, I'm so glad I moved out of that apartment later that year